We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us, Nick Squared. It's like old times when you come on. We do our share of legal cases. We've got some gavel-to-gavel ones. Nick Leonardo will be here, and we're talking about some of the high-profile developments right now on a variety of cases. We've got some folks who waited through the break. We'll take some calls before we hit to some other ones. Let's go to Joe. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Nick and Nick.
Good morning, Joe.
It's one thing about this Delky case that bothers me, because when they show the clip of what went on, the part of the clip they don't show is when he fell down with the gun in his hand. He dropped the gun, and when he got back up, he picked the gun up again and took off running with it. They neglect to show that part of it. They don't show the full clip. And that's disturbing to me that they show the clip over and over and over, but they leave that part of it out. The second thing is, on these juveniles, they're contracting the juveniles to a contractor. I think they've already canceled that contract with them as soon as it's up.
Oh, over it, yeah.
This one girl that hit the policeman and killed him, since she's been down there in juveniles, she has been nothing but a problem. She's been cited at least 3 times for getting into fights. They caught her with a shank, and yet she said she's this little innocent thing that just was smoking marijuana and didn't know what was going on. So it's a whole lot of problems with a whole lot of different things here. Juveniles, I don't have any problem with putting juveniles at lesser crimes in juvenile, but if they're not going to do nothing to them when they cause a problem and they escape on a regular basis, then it's not working.
Yeah. I mean, it's safe to say that these 2 that are being transferred to adult court, this was not the first crime they've committed. And that's where the problem is. It's early on where there's a car theft and these teens are arrested for stealing cars, and then they're let go the next day. I mean, what kind of message does that send? I'm not saying throw them away forever, but lock them up for a while. I mean, they think they can get away with anything.
Well, and you know, Judge Calloway can't control necessarily what goes on at the detention facilities that we have in this county for juveniles. I mean, that is up to our General Assembly, and again, that's where I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Okay, I mean, just having those children, locked up doesn't really fix anything. I mean, what kind of programs are going on inside of these facilities that can help these young people realize or maximize their potential? Again, that's not something that the court system can necessarily do. That's out of their pay grade. But when he talks about not seeing the full video in the Delky case, obviously when it goes to trial, and the state will have to show the full video. And again, as I said earlier, I don't think you need to rush to judgment on what we see in the video. We all see the video. We all know what happened, who shot who. But again, I think there's a lot of facts, a lot of backstory that's going to come out surrounding this video that is really going to be the tipping point for an acquittal or for a conviction. And I think people need to reserve judgment on exactly what was the circumstances surrounding that shooting.
And I'm not sure how much video hasn't been shown. I thought most of it's been released. I do know that at trial we're going to see enhancements, slow-mos. Sure. I know that both sides are spending a lot of time on the video trying to show what it is they perceived happened. And that's the thing. A lot of people, it's not always fair to say, well, there's video, so that tells the whole story.
Well, that's exactly right.
I mean, there can be more to it. As you said, stuff before any of the camera showed what happened there and maybe just after.
What Officer Delky knew. Was there any interaction between he and Mr. Hambrick prior to giving chase? Those are questions that I have personally that I don't know the answers to, and I think that's why you need to reserve judgment until all the proof is in. It's not like I said, it's not a whodunit. We know what happened and who shot whom. The question is, does that act rise to the level of a first-degree murder charge? And that's something that the jury's going to have to determine.
Yeah, and they're going to have to go in open-minded, like you said. They may know about the video, but they have to be fair enough to say, even if I have an inkling which way I'm leaning, I can set that aside and just decide based on what I hear in the courtroom.
Well, and you got to follow the law. You know, the law is complicated in this. And we had a case from the Supreme Court in 1985 that came out that said that a police officer could shoot an unarmed felon or someone who was committing a felon in the presence of a police officer, and then the General Assembly codified that or made it a statutory law. And so that's obviously going to have a big bearing. Was Mr. Hambrick engaged in a felony at the time of the shooting? And that's going to be a question that that's kind of a complicated legal issue, and the jurors have to go through the jury charge and apply the facts to the law the court gives them to arrive at their verdict.
All right, let's take a call from Ann. Good morning, Ann. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. First, let me say I support the East Nashville police officers 100%. They're awesome. But in the last year, we've seen a police officer on Broadway step into traffic and try and stop a moving vehicle. We've had an officer run into the interstate and be killed by a moving vehicle. And we've had a teenager driving a vehicle run into a police car and kill an officer who was not wearing his seatbelt. Will the fact that that officer was not wearing his seatbelt, will an autopsy determine whether or not the fact he wasn't wearing a seatbelt have an impact on his death? And if that is the case, will that impact that trial? I support our police officers, but all of those actions had an impact on their deaths. And those were all risky and actions that were unnecessary. And had a civilian done that, they would have been deemed unnecessary, and that would have been cause for their death. So
okay, let's get your take on this. And it's been something that a lot of people have had strong emotions about. Tragic what happened to all of these officers doing a very dangerous job, dying in the line of duty. But in maybe a case where an officer is going beyond the speed limit, depending on the circumstances, not wearing his seatbelt, dies as a result of this wreck, okay? Or an officer in the line of duty jumps out of his vehicle to chase down some juveniles, and then he gets hit by a car on the interstate, and now the juveniles being maybe accused of homicide because they ran and he got hit. And I can definitely see at one side where the argument is, look, if they hadn't ran, he wouldn't have gotten out and got hit. But on the other hand, those juvies certainly did not intend for this officer to die. And I know people are so angry. And here at News Channel 5, Alexandra Cohen interviewed the mother of one of the juvies that ran. And people were outraged by, well, no, we cover every side of this. And, let's not just not listen to everything. And she has said, yeah, he probably shouldn't have ran, but we're charging him with killing this officer. How do you decide on whether or not that's a strong case or not?
Well, I mean, again, this is something that's up to the District Attorney General's office, the elected official, as to whether or not to pursue criminal charges. But again, we have varying gradations or different levels of murder in the state of Tennessee, and I believe this young man was charged with reckless homicide, which is an offense. It sounds horrible, but it's an offense that you're considered or presumed eligible for probation if you were convicted of an offense like that. So they're not charged with something that carries a significant amount
That's a really good point.
of time here. But the charge in and of itself sounds horrible. But I do want to echo what Ann said about the East Nashville Police Department. Just yesterday, as a citizen, I had a need to deal with the police, and Sergeant Kerry Briley came out immediately, took care of what my issue was that I was needing to address. So we do have a good police department, and the East Nashville Police Precinct does a great job over there. So I just wanted to give them a shout out as well, because I do agree with that. But we're seeing more and more of these kind of charges. We saw it with Officer. The one that just was killed a couple of years ago on the ramp out there off Neely's Bend.
Where he was, and we just, Officer Mumau?
That's right.
And they just they commemorated that for him, and he died in the line of duty, truly heroically trying to save a suicidal woman, and got swept away in the raging current, and it was just horribly tragic.
It's a dangerous job,
yes,
and it's getting more and more dangerous every day. As long as we have Waffle House shooters and people that are doing crazy things, that's a seriously dangerous job when you're out there responding to calls, because you never know if it's going to be your last call. You never know what you're getting into.
So I think you make a great point. People get very angry, and for some, they'd say just charge them with first-degree murder. That's not it. But I think it's fair to say, maybe if you are asked by an officer to stop or whatever, you're fleeing, and he or she gets hurt or killed in pursuit of you, you could end up being charged in connection with that officer's death. But it's not necessarily going to be first-degree murder. It could be what you said.
Reckless. You were engaging in reckless behavior, and someone died.
You should have known. If you hadn't run, he'd still be alive. So you're going to have held some responsibility there, which I think's right.
Well, I don't know if I could find that under the law in that set of facts, okay? But I mean, if you've got a police officer who has been killed in the line of duty, so you have this hero, right? The picture's up, and the jury's looking at the picture the whole time through the trial. Whoever's sitting there as the defendant is going to likely probably be convicted just because of the outcry over the officer's death. But in that set of facts, that's a real tough decision. And we saw Judge Holt actually in General Sessions dismissed one of the charges against one of the individuals because he didn't believe that there was sufficient probable cause to move forward. But again, we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in the way these prosecutions are handled, and more people are facing consequences when an officer is killed giving chase.
Listen, we'll take another break. When we come back, we'll take calls from Ronnie and others, questions or comments about these cases with legal analyst Nick Leonardo right after this. Stay with us.